Good time zones, everybody. This is Ash.
My name's Rune.
And this is the first ever episode of our podcast, Bookmarked.
And we're using this podcast to talk about books that we have seen banned a lot. And, like, in general,
Yes.
banned books. Or, like, challenged books. And, we want to talk about why they're being challenged. And we also are here because it's part of a university project.
Yeah, that is true here. As Rune said, we are doing this podcast to discuss the topic of banned, challenge, and controversial books, just because it is a big thing, especially in North America as of today. But for this first one, we decided to go with the short story. Quite a few people, I think, know. But yeah.
Yeah, even if you don't know, like, the story itself, the name should ring a bell.
Yeah.
Maybe in other ways.
Other ways, it's also quite a well-known title and saying that people do use quite a bit. And it is Lamb to the Slaughter by Roald Dahl. We'll get to that in a moment, though. We're just going to start doing a brief background on him here.
Because, not everybody knows who this guy is.
Yeah.
To be fair, I forgot who he was.
Or everything that he did in his life.
Yeah, he did a lot of stuff. We're not going to go into too much detail
No.
about that. But he did do a lot of stuff.
So, Roald Dahl was born in Llandaff, Wales, to Norwegian parents. His dad and one of his sisters passed when he was only 3 years old, and so he was raised by just his mother and had 6 siblings.
Yeah, he was one of 6 siblings.
One of 6 siblings. One passed away when he was young, along with his dad.
Poor kid.
Poor guy.
He joined the Royal Air Force in Nairobi, and then because of that, he suffered a plane crash. And his first ever prose was a recounting of that experience that he had. And then later in his life, he married actress Patricia Neal and began writing for his children while he was raising his children with Patricia.
That's a lot of kids. He lost one of said kids to measles, and also one of his infant sons had suffered some brain damage due to a car accident. And this accident gave way to Dahl assisting a toy maker and a neurosurgeon to invent the Dahl-Till shunt that helped with neuroscience and brain
it's helped,
surgery.
It's helped a lot of kids. I'm not sure if it's still in use today. I don't study neuroscience, but
yeah.
That's why
it honestly isn't. It's most likely not in use still, but it's
definitely
used
stuff
as a prototype to continue advancements. But we obviously aren't neuroscience.
Yeah, he suffered pretty dark upbringing compared to most people that you hear about. So his writing is pretty fitting. He uses dark humor a lot, and he also tries to remain loyal to like a child, and how like they feel, they like fairness, they like magic, and then also the very nice feeling of revenge.
Yes, love revenge.
I found this most notable when I remember that he wrote Matilda, which was very much a story about getting revenge.
Yes, that really was, and that's probably one of his most notable books.
That and
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, Willy Wonka,
James and the Giant Peach.
Those
are like his most well-known children's stories.
Definitely. But he did write tons of other stories as well as a collage of short stories, and one of which obviously we'll be reading today. Well, not reading, talking about. So he started off his career writing fiction and nonfiction for and aimed towards adults. And he was awarded the Mystery Writers of America's Edgar Award 3 times. That is a lot.
That's a mouthful.
It is. But it's also 3 times winning this award.
And I feel like I think it was just for the works that he started. Because I think, if I remember correctly, that he wrote 19.
Yeah.
They have variations of I think short stories and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's a lot.
And he passed away at the age of 74 in 1990. So he lived quite a while there. But he passed away from a rare blood disorder.
I don't know if it's ever been clarified what it was, but clearly if it's not stated, we don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Or it's simply just not our business. So
that's true. Not everything for a famous person out there deserves to be our business in life. But his second wife, Felicity Dahl, created the Roald Dahl Foundation, which was later renamed to the Roald Dahl's Marvelous Children's Charity. Also a mouthful.
Yep.
This charity offers grants in areas of neurology and hematology.
Which makes sense considering he helped, earlier in his life with creating that shunt, and then he passed away from a rare blood disorder, so that makes sense.
So, brain studies and blood studies. Now that we've gotten that brief overview of the background of Roald Dahl, as well as some of his more notable works, we're just going to get right into talking about Lamb to the Slaughter, the short story that we are just going to be chatting about with. That was controversial and still is. So this story was written in 1953, and it has kind of like a well-known idea if you know of Alfred Hitchcock's adaptations of Lamb to the Slaughter, and just the name itself kind of gives away.
Yeah. The episode, I don't want to say expanded on, he just kind of gave, a closing statement in his episode, because technically the short story itself ends on not really a cliffhanger, but it's kind of like a cliffhanger.
It's not rounded
definitely
off
up to interpretation.
Properly. Definitely. So if you obviously don't know about Lamb to the Slaughter, this story is about a wife who, as I've interpreted it, was most likely having some marriage issues with her husband, who decided to get a divorce from her. And also, this was written in 1953, so at that time, divorce was a very taboo idea and topic here.
I think it was also mentioned that she's pregnant.
Yes, I believe some.
So, that's even worse?
Yeah.
Divorcing a pregnant lady?
He did say that he was going to take care of her, but the thing is, at that time, you're a divorced woman, pregnant. This is 1950s. People aren't gonna like you.
Oh, for sure.
Even more than they already don't like women. So she decides that she's had enough of this guy and grabs a frozen leg of lamb from her freezer, obviously, and just smacks him over the head. And then decides to play cool by going to the store to grab some extra food and act like she walked in to just his body being there.
And then she, phones the police that apparently she's very close to.
Because I'm pretty sure the husband...
Yeah, the husband also is he's
a detective? No. Maybe. I don't know.
He works in the police force, so the people who come to her house after she says that her husband is dead, and then she decides brilliantly to disguise the murder weapon by cooking it.
By cooking it and feeding it to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's how it ends.
Yeah. But then they also go on and they're like, there's no way that the murderer can't be a man and he can't have gone that far. And yet she's just standing right there and just actually, you guys don't know this, but that was me.
It's laughing in the other room.
A woman. Just laughing in the other room. They broke pretty much every single traffic law to get there. And police are technically supposed to follow the law.
Technically
Do
they are.
No.
That's debatable.
Okay. But that's pretty much just a brief overarching idea of what goes on in this novel. Obviously there's more depth to it, and there's imagery that we can't really explain. We can only do what we can do.
I was reading, it was on the Wikipedia page. I couldn't find, I could find the original source, but I had to have a subscription to read it.
Yeah.
But apparently he got the idea from one of his friends at the time, who suggested, what if you just wrote about a woman killing her husband with a leg of mutton, leg of a lamb. And I guess he took that literally and decided to actually write it. And now here we are.
Sometimes that's where the best ideas come from.
Just an offhand comment, and then boom, famous literature.
Happens quite a bit with well-known stories. It's a very common thing.
So now that we've outlined the general plot of the story, we kind of want to just go into stuff that we've personally annotated because we read this separately, talk about things that we found interesting, and then go on from there.
Yeah, I highlighted quite a few little bits that were foreshadowing to either a tense relationship or towards the inevitable murder of this guy. And one is literally right at the beginning, second paragraph, when it says, now and again she glanced at the clock, but without anxiety. She merely wanted to satisfy herself that each minute that went by made it nearer the time when he would come home, which is, without the anxiety, would also kind of allude to that idea of the fact that he is obviously working in law enforcement. Mm-hmm. It's a dangerous job. He could possibly not come home, so that would be an anxiety-inducing thing. But also, at that moment, she's got no anxiety. But later on, she could have that anxiety that comes in because there's a possibility of a really tense relationship or possible domestic violence within. So
I was looking into it, and I think if you were to watch the Alfred Hitchcock adaptation, I think he interpreted this section as, or like when they start talking, that he was committing infidelity. And that's why he was divorcing the wife.
Okay.
Which doesn't make it any better.
Oh, definitely.
Makes it like 100 times worse. Especially if he's deciding to divorce her while she's pregnant, to go to a woman who's not pregnant. Because I don't think it's mentioned that they have any children at this time.
Yeah, I don't believe so.
So this would be their first kid, and clearly he's getting cold feet, and he doesn't want to raise this kid, so he just decides to divorce her.
Yeah, and when they're all actually discussing, well, he's bringing up the idea of divorce, does go and says, I know it's a tough time to be telling you this, but it wasn't any other way, which obviously could allude to that idea that she's pregnant.
Oh, for sure. I think another thing to bring out is she mentions when he comes home and they, say their hellos, she goes, she loved the shape of his mouth. She especially liked the way he didn't complain about being tired. And I highlighted that, and I'm like, that's an interesting to love your husband for. Because in that time, the women were expected to, take care of their husbands when they complained. If they had, anything that they didn't like, if they wanted something done.
They were to be the doting wife.
So the fact that he wasn't complaining and then she liked that.
But, all this kind of stuff happened within the first few pages.
Yeah, and it's a really fast-paced short story. So... Also, he's kind of an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I think just today was a bit worse for him.
Yeah. He was definitely... I honestly do agree with that interpretation from Hitchcock that this could have been an infidelity situation where he was possibly with someone from work maybe, or someone he knew, and that this was just him telling her at this time. And she was like, I'm not having that. Also, probably she kind of suspected at some point, because everyone knows if you're being cheated on. It's the signs
eventually begins to show themselves. It's you have a gut feeling, but you don't want to admit it.
Yeah.
And then you finally find the evidence, oh God, okay. And then it's confirmed.
It's confirmed. And then, it's just the signs are constantly there. And so she probably had the idea. That probably also alluded to that anxiety she was having. But then that state of shock she was in after he announced the divorce and taking hold of the leg of lamb to murder him.
Yeah, and it's not explicitly mentioned that it's a divorce. You kind of have to put the clues together when he's talking about it, because it goes when they start talking, and it just he's like, this is going to be a big shock to you, I'm afraid, but I thought about it a good deal, and I decided that the only thing to do is to tell you immediately. And then it goes, and he told her.
Yeah.
Which
also that I've decided to tell you immediately also kind of alludes to that idea of infidelity, because he's like, I'm not going to let this go on, and then you find out.
I can kind of respect it. I would rather not be lied to if I were in her
shoes. For years, which could happen.
Yeah.
But then also that's paragraph right after, and it's I know it's a tough time to be telling you this, but there simply wasn't any other way. Of course, I'll give you money and see that you're taken care of, which really alludes to that idea of divorce. Because if they weren't getting a divorce, why would she need money and be taken care of? But also at that time, women weren't paid well.
They probably weren't paid at all.
If they were paid at all.
I feel like women having jobs, in
was still very taboo.
The 1950s is it can happen, but it's really uncommon.
You were either a secretary or a teacher or a nurse. One of those three. Secretary, teacher, or nurse. pretty much. Yeah.
Because they're occupations that you typically see women have. Like, it's shifted from, men having that job to women having that job. And now, like, women are expected to go into those fields.
Yeah, the expectations now there.
And it's still very true even today. Not as common. But, like, parents still kind of sometimes enforce that idea, like, oh, we want you to go into this. We want you to become this.
Yeah.
Even if it's not directly, like, a nurse or...
Yeah, like, it's still frowned upon to see women in STEM, any kind of science field, because it's a very foreign idea. But, yeah, there's definitely that feminization of workforces and all that with this push that women have to be teachers, they have to be nurses, they have to be social workers even, secretaries, like any kind of job that makes it where the woman is doing a lot of nurturing.
Because that's ideally how they were raised,
Because that's the perspective that many people have of women, is that they are the nurturers.
They're the nurturer. They're meant to, take care of the family, take care of the household. Like,
they have
dishes,
to have that
clean,
maternal aspect.
And, like, they're taught that from, like, a young age, too.
Oh, yeah. Of
course, you're not going to make your child cook at, like, 5 years old.
But you do start learning how to cook early. Otherwise, you make terrible food. Also, that last line there, well, last few lines here, actually, where they were talking about, the police were actually talking about the possible murder suspect while eating the lamb that was the murder weapon. And they're just chatting, talking about the possibilities of where that weapon could be. And then just in the other room, Mary, the wife, is just laughing because she's kind of gotten over that state of shock. And she's also now like, oh, I did do that.
It's also like maybe like a relief. It's like, if I can't have him, no one will.
Exactly.
I just thought of that because
it's the idea.
I like that saying.
If I can't have him, no one will. Yeah, it's like that removal of shock. She was definitely in shock when she first did it.
For sure. She didn't want to believe it after she was told.
Yeah, and then obviously it could be no remorse for doing it. That idea of if I can't have him, no one can. That's an idea of no remorse. It's like, so what? I did this. But it's also just unnerving way to end it, because obviously it's so open-ended kind of in this. Like, does she end up getting caught because she's laughing? Or do the police just think that she's like in such a state of shock that she's trying to laugh, like cope with laughter?
I can't say that word, but I know what I'm trying to say.
Compartmentalization. There we go. Compartmentalization.
There we go.
That's just some interesting points that I have.
That's like more like serious. My personal favorite moment is, after she's told herself that she has killed her husband, and she's trying to look in the mirror and tell herself what she's going to say when she goes to the grocery store and talks to Sam.
Oh,
that is my favorite moment in the short story, because you can tell that when she actually gets to the grocery store, she sounds so forced.
Oh, yeah. Where is it? Oh, the constant, hello, Sam. Hello, Sam. And then the, I want some potatoes, please, Sam. Yes, and perhaps a can of beans, too. Patrick's decided he's tired and doesn't want to eat out tonight. We usually go out on Thursdays, and now I don't have any vegetables in the house. It sounds like she's rambling to try and cover it up here.
And then when he goes, then how about some meat, Mrs. Maloney? She goes, no, I've got meat, thanks. I've got a nice leg of lamb from the freezer.
The pause. Thanks. I've got a nice leg of lamb from the freezer. Just the pauses. It's like she's like, yeah. Oh, thanks. It's okay. I've got a nice leg of lamb though, from the freezer. Nowhere else.
It's clear that the Sam hasn't caught on to something that something's wrong.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that you as the reader can tell that she's she's forcing it.
She's forcing it. She's adding this stuff on to try and make her seem innocent. Obviously, she's not.
It's just my favorite moment, especially when she's just talking into the mirror to herself, deciding what she's gonna say and how she's gonna say it. Because I would do that because I don't like talking.
Yeah, there's also just the ending of that kind of moment where it's like, thank you, Sam, good night. That obviously would be something said, but the amount of times she says Sam in this conversation where it's like, you don't have to keep saying. It's like, hello, Sam. And then you say it again a few moments later. It's like, please, I want some potatoes, please, Sam. And then it's like, good night, Sam. It's like, okay, thanks. That's kind of unnerving.
You could have just said it at the beginning and at the end.
Yeah, you didn't have to throw that one in there. Is there...
Walking in, Patrick, she called. How are you, darling? As he's like dead on the floor.
Actively dead.
That's just a funny visual. She's walking in pretending that he's, alive and well, comes home. Oh no, he's dead.
Yeah.
Who could have done that?
Oh no. And then obviously the call to the police where it's like, quick, come quickly, Patrick's dead.
Mm-hmm.
And then someone's just like, who's speaking? And it's like, Patrick.
If you don't know who Patrick, what do you mean you don't know who Patrick is?
You don't know who Patrick is? He's a detective at your police station.
This is his wife.
This is his wife, Mrs. Maloney. And then just asking, do you mean that Patrick's dead? Like, yeah, I just said that.
It's like, I think so. He's lying on the floor and I think he's dead because he's not breathing.
And then just immediately, we'll be there as soon as possible.
Breaking every law. Road law.
Yeah. And then they just called everyone in. The doctor, 2 detectives, police photographer, and a man who knew about fingerprints.
Well, you're not gonna find any fingerprints.
No.
None that are relevant to the case, at least.
Yeah. Well, not that you would think.
I don't really know how you would find fingerprints on a leg of lamb anyways.
You wouldn't, because especially with the fact it was frozen and out of the ice, and most likely because at the time it was wrapped in paper.
Mm-hmm.
All of that kind of stuff, the paper would have been thrown in the trash because they're like, oh, she's making lamb for dinner. That's fine. There could be the fingerprints on him when she went and knelt down beside him. Because
yeah, this is, it's a little bit later down after the police are talking to her, trying to figure out what's going on, and then she eventually gets them to stay, invites them. She's like, do you want to have a drink? And they're like, well, technically we shouldn't because we were on the job, but because you're a friend, we'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
And then one of the detectives, he goes, did you know that your oven is still on and the meat is still inside? And I'm like, is that not suspicious?
Yeah.
Because didn't she put it in the oven before she left to go get groceries? Why would she do that?
Well, also, the thing is if they decided that they were not going to go out, that was kind of the idea, the alibi she went with.
Yeah, the alibi.
So he would be home. He would have been like, I'm not feeling like going out tonight. Can we just eat at home? So he's like, okay, I'll go grab the leg of lamb from our freezer, and I'm going to go throw it into the oven to defrost. Yeah. And then she's there. She's like,
he's still home, so technically if something goes wrong.
She's looking through the fridge, through the pantry and all that kind of stuff. And we have no vegetables.
I read it in the sense that because he's dead, nobody was gonna notice. So she left the oven on with the meat inside.
Yeah.
Not realizing that she left with the assumption that Patrick was still alive.
Yeah. But yeah, so she's like, goes to the store, there's no vegetables, get that, come home. This is all part of her alibi, her story. And she's like, holy crap.
My husband's dead.
But I actually killed him. He's dead. And then just her going on I can't eat anything. It'd be a favor if you ate this up because this is too much for one person. It's this huge leg of lamb.
And even though she knows the both of them probably won't be able to finish it, she tries to get them to eat more anyways.
Yeah.
And they do.
And also they were there for a long period of time trying to figure out who the murderer was, where the weapon is, and all that kind of stuff. So obviously they're going to be hungry, especially since it's in the evening. Majority, it's most likely 5 p.m., 6 p.m.
And depending on when they started, they might be close to getting off shift.
Exactly.
Or they might have just started, job times are crazy. I think another favorite line of mine is from one of the detectives, and he goes, it's probably right under our noses. What do you think, Jack?
Yep.
It is.
It right is.
It's not really under your nose, but it's inside your body. It is in your stomach.
In your mouth. Yeah.
You are eating the weapon.
They're actively aiding in murder.
And they have no idea.
They have no idea. They're actively aiding an active murderer with hiding the evidence.
And basically that's how it ends, because then the next line is, and in the other room, Mary Maloney begins to laugh.
Yeah.
And that's how it ends.
That's how it ends.
Now, there is, quote-unquote, an alternative ending, which is the Alfred Hitchcock Presents episode, where she gets married again, then kills the husband, and then gets caught.
She's just a husband murderer.
But I don't know if it's ever confirmed that that it's revealed that she killed her first husband. But it is known that she killed the second husband that she got married to. So then she gets caught.
I may have to throw that episode into my watch list.
I might do that too.
Okay, and so now we want to talk about why it was challenged and why it's seen as controversial.
Yeah, we could talk about, first of all, why are some books challenged?
Oh my gosh.
So there's many reasons, but
Tons.
The top 3 reasons for books being challenged or banned is they're considered sexually explicit, which, fair, I can understand that.
Yeah. No,
specifically,
no child under the age of, I want to say 15, 16, when they're starting to figure out their own body.
When they reach high school,
yeah,
it kind of essentially is like what I would believe to be when you start, just be able to start reading books like that.
You're not going to throw your child into university without knowing a single thing about, sexuality.
Hey.
Well, actually, where I grew up,
there was kids where, when I was in grade 5 sex ed, you had to get parental permission. And there were some kids who did not get parental permission, so they were separated from the rest of us.
My school, we didn't
and I have no idea.
Sex ed.
We went to a Christian school. So
we had a talk on periods. And the guys had a talk on condoms. And that was it.
I still don't understand why sex ed was separated.
It's stupid.
Because
the thing is, periods are a taboo concept.
I know, but that's not all we talked about. We also talked to, in my high school we had not really full on sex ed, but in my second, we talked about sexual health in my high school comm class, and we talked about contraceptives for both men and women.
My teacher tried to have a sex ed class in our high school set up. We had one meeting with the teacher who she brought in, and said something about, I don't even remember what. It was either contraceptives or abortion or premarital sex or something like that, all taboo stuff. And she was deliberately told, you're never allowed to talk about this stuff again. So we were the first and only class to have one class meeting, 1 hour long sex ed class in high school. A high schooler not allowed to learn about that kind of stuff.
That is insane.
Insanity.
There's differences. So Rune, I went to a public high school. Ash went to a Christian high school. So
the funny thing is, it's not a private school. It also wasn't a public school. It was just a charter school.
Yeah.
So,
and I grew up with people who went to. Actually, we had Catholic schools, not Christian. We had Catholic schools.
Catholic schools are a whole other thing. I have a friend who went to Catholic school.
I had a friend who went to every single elementary school in my town before settling on my elementary school, because she had such terrible experiences every year that she went to these other schools.
Oh, wow.
She's like, oh my god. And then she settled on, my elementary school, and she's like, I'm staying here. This is a good school. How coincident. It was a coincidence. Ours is a public school.
Man, I was all throughout school, I was told public schools are the worst place to be, because you're never going to make any friends. There's so many bad influences. They do so many drugs. Also, the thing is, where I grew up, I grew up near public schools that had constant police on site because there were knife fights, there were intentional overdoses, there was nearly a murder.
Yeah, so we have, again, I grew up in a small town. She grew up in a city.
I grew up in a city.
So, for me,
differences here.
The other elementary school in my town, another public elementary school, but that one wasn't dual language. I went to a French immersion school, so for the longest time, there wasn't anything bad about my school. But then I've heard when I got into high school, we've intermingled some people from one public school, and then I went from the other public school. We met together, and they have such horrible stories from that public school that it got to the point where there were drugs on the premises. These kids are 13, okay? But apparently it wasn't the kids. It was the teachers.
Whoa.
So
Were We're getting a bit off topic here, by the way.
But I mean, it does correlate to
It does correlate.
Sexually explicit and anyways. Another thing, offensive language.
Oh my gosh.
That one does not. I mean, for kids, yes.
For kids, young kids, yes. And a lot of Roald Dahl. Well, what Roald Dahl is known for was the idea that he was garnered towards children novels.
Mm-hmm.
So young teen fan, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so these short stories that he wrote that were garnered towards the adults were challenged because all these people who are challenging them are like, he's a child author. He shouldn't be writing these kinds of topics that are more garnered towards adults. Because a kid's going to be like, oh, it's Roald Dahl. I love Matilda. They're going to pick it up and they're going to see she murdered her husband.
Scarred for life.
Scarred for life. Terrified of everything else.
Terrified of
getting married.
Getting married. Legs of lamb.
Legs of lamb. They're going to be terrified of getting married. Most likely,
well, yeah,
especially if they're a young boy.
Yeah, it's like
they pick up lamb to slaughter.
Like,
first of all, not really caring.
If I marry this girl that I like, what happens if I don't like her anymore and I don't want to?
What happens if
I don't want to hurt her anymore?
A possible divorce.
Yeah,
she's gonna murder me.
Yeah, you're gonna kill me.
They're not gonna want to get married
because kids have very wild imaginations. Okay,
they do. But they're also extremely impressionable, and their imaginations can impression them.
That's why a lot of core things are taught when you're a kid, because it's stuff that's going to stay with you into your later years.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can speak from experience.
Some core things, that is.
That kind of coincides with the materials was unsuited to any age group.
That's a loaded one. That unsuitable to any age group is an insane thing to...
Because, what do you mean an elderly woman can't read that?
An adult. Okay, let me clarify here. An adult over the age, let's say 25, already out of school, most likely. They're graduating unless they're in law, possibly, or going back for another degree. They're getting their masters, their their PhDs, their medical school, anything like that. They're most likely out of school if they went. They obviously have been subject to everything in the media. There's hundreds and hundreds of crime shows, murder shows, true crime. Big topic amongst mid to late, early 20s, 30s, all that kind of stuff. A big thing, especially for women. They love true crime.
Young adults, basically.
Young adults love true crime. This story would be great for young adults. Because that's also bending the narrative that even still to this day in 2025, that women cannot be murderers. And that if women are murderers, then something happened. Something drastic. And in this, she's pregnant. She is experiencing an influx of emotion from being told she's getting a divorce from her husband. And it's the 1950s. She's not going to have any autonomy on her own. She, still technically needs a man to care for her because that's just how society was.
Yeah, and it's even if she were to get a job, it wouldn't be allowed because she's pregnant.
Exactly. She'd be, as soon as they see that she's pregnant, they're going to be like, we can't hire you because we're just going to have to let you go in the next
and assuming she did have a job, she would have been let go. She would have been fired.
As soon as she got pregnant, she would have been fired. That was
There's
no maternity leave.
It's always the women's fault if someone's pregnant. Never the man.
Never the man. Never the man.
And so other reasons can include... These are the most, I don't want to, the top 3 are the most common, but I feel like a lot of them have these as underroots to their meanings. Religious viewpoints.
Especially if the people challenging it are from Christianity. And I'm going to say this as someone who grew up in a Christian school, who knows all this kind of stuff. It is taboo. It's insane to talk about any other religion that was banned at my school.
Yeah.
Which in of itself is insane. You should be able to talk and have friendships with people from other religions. Anyone that's not straight or cisgendered. So LGBTQIA+ in general. And especially in America, if you know any news going on in the United States of America, especially leading up to that election in November of 2024 with Project 2025.
That he says he's not putting into
That he
place.
says he's not putting into place, and tons of people are like, he's actually not a leader on it. Totally is. That's our opinion on this.
We are from up north. We are
Canadians.
We are supposed to be his closest ally.
No, we're not.
Not anymore.
But this entire thing, Project 2025, has tons of books on their list that they're banning. And large shareholders and people who support this Project 2025 are churches and so-called Christians.
Yep.
Like, if you're of someone in a religion, a Christian, head of church, anything like that, you give tons of money to churches, even if you're not of that religion yourself or anything like that, and you are encouraging the spread of silence of media, books, encouraging hate in any kind of way. So like, you silence these books, you remove them from places, you're removing this way for kids to learn to not be a terrible person.
Yeah.
These books that you're removing show different viewpoints. They're being censored, they're being banned, they're being blocked, anything like that. You're going to remove this gateway of knowledge, and you're going to have so many closed-minded people in life.
So yeah, other reasons, as we mentioned, are...
Sorry! Got a little tangent there.
The religious viewpoints, the LGBTQIA content, it might include violence. This is...
Which is insane.
No, the next one is absurd. Racism.
Sorry, we can't talk about history.
God forbid we talk about history.
God forbid we talk about
or
prejudice
God
that
forbid
are put onto different
marginalized
groups, especially in America. But
it's like, God forbid we let
people
them have
of
a
color.
voice. Yeah.
God forbid we let them have a voice and talk about their own perspectives on life and how they themselves could have experienced racism and wrote it in their books. God forbid we let people have a voice.
Yeah. The next one, use or I added the mentions of illegal substances, which I can kind of get.
I get that. You don't want to spread.
If it's like a biography, if it's about your life growing up, or like a memoir, you should be allowed to talk about that, especially if you're someone who's
especially
integral part of your life.
Yeah. If it's an integral part of your life and who you became to that day, that
and
led you up to that point,
and how you overcame it.
Yeah, like there's tons of well-known people out there who struggled with some kind of substance abuse.
This is kind of, I don't want to say niche, but I've been getting a lot of videos on like TikTok of like Pete Davidson.
Oh yeah, I've been getting videos about that too.
Because he's gotten sober.
Yeah.
Because a couple years ago struggled heavily with like substance abuse.
Oh yeah. And well, there's tons of artists and actors and actresses who have, the industry's lost due to substance abuse. Like, it's a big thing.
Yep.
And yeah, there's all those conspiracy theories about them not dying to actual substance abuse, but actually to other artists or competitors or whatever. But like, lots of these people...
And like, that directly leads into like the racism. Because people automatically think like, oh, illegal substances, they must be a black person.
They must be black, they must be like Mexican, they can't be white, is that idea.
Yeah.
Is that this person is not white, which in of itself is an insane thought and stereotype. But the fact that people
many people like are raised with that ideology.
Yeah.
Because you grow up based on your environment, and if your parents
racism is not an innate thing we have. It is taught.
Yeah, it is taught.
It is
and you have to unteach yourself.
Yeah.
If you
want to no longer,
if you want to be a good person.
If you want to be a good person, you have to teach yourself not to be racist if you grew up being racist.
Or like being surrounded by people who are racist.
Exactly.
Because like even if you might not have done anything, but
you still internally you still have those views and those stereotypes that you're putting onto people, and that is a big thing that especially we're seeing today. And with Gen Z, they're slowly breaking down this internal racism that people have, but it's still this idea that no matter, like, you grow up in whatever situation you grew up in, but if it's a bad situation where it's like there's racism, stereotyping, anything like that, you gotta unteach yourself.
Yeah, because like you don't have to be explicitly racist to be racist.
You don't have to be going around throwing say, slurs.
Yeah, I know some people do, but you don't gotta be doing that to be racist.
You don't gotta do that, especially in this day of 2025.
Like,
come on.
You can commit a microaggression, not even realize that you did it, but because it's so internalized, you don't even realize that what you're saying can hurt people.
The next
one is anti-family content.
What does that even mean? Anti-family. Do you
I
not
feel
want
like-
the spread of families?
I feel like it's like women getting divorces and like women being empowered, like women's empowerment. I feel like that's what it has to do with that. The fact that these women don't want to succumb, live a white picket fence life with their husbands.
The American dream. Obviously, this is only an audio, so you didn't see that, but I did air quotes.
We've been
on
doing
the
air quotes a
American
lot.
dream. It's been a big thing. The idea of the American dream and the white picket fence, and if you don't know anything on this, research it. A great book, I love it personally, is The Death of a Salesman, who really talks about the idea of the American dream and how unachievable it is.
Oh yeah.
It really does talk about that. Another one is The Reluctant Fundamentalist.
Okay.
In the perspective of I believe, I'm not going to exactly say, but I'm pretty sure someone from the Middle East before and after the events of 9/11.
Oh yeah.
And that really discusses the idea of the American dream.
Especially how like events like
Huge
that
book.
can like change one's perspective of that dream.
Huge, impactful book. I loved it.
And
But that anti-family idea.
That's just what I think it is. It wants to shut women out from like
Yeah, I would agree
from
on that.
individuality.
From individuality
And, like,
and autonomy.
Yeah, being their own self.
Allowing a woman to not go and be forced into this family.
Yeah, be forced
idea.
into like making a family or having a family.
Yeah, because not everyone wants that. Not even women. Not every man wants that.
Yeah.
It is a thing.
But I feel like this one in
It's
particular
not
is
talked about a lot, but it is a thing that not every man wants a family.
Yeah, like this is not really irrelevant, but like in my sociology class we talked about like cohabiting, and in today's era so many people are like together but they don't want to get married.
Yeah.
So marriage rates are down, so therefore divorce rates are going down because nobody's getting married, so there's nobody to divorce. But also because of that, birth rates are going down, and that's more like convenient. Like it's heavy in like today in Canada, our birth rate is really low because people just don't want to have families. They don't want to. Also because it's expensive.
Yes.
Our economy sucks.
Inflation.
But yeah, it's like people can live together without the expectation that they have to get married or they have to be together. They can just be like, I know people don't believe like men and women can't be friends. You can.
You can.
It is entirely possible.
That idea that men and women cannot be friends is insane, and it's still a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because also there's that entire thing where there's tons of stories where men and women are thought to be just friends, and then one of them's like, actually, I like you. I thought we were dating this entire time. And it's like, I've been told so many times, like I have tons of male friends, but I've been told so many times, like, hey, so when are you and this guy gonna go out on a date finally? Like, he obviously likes you. And like, yeah, as a friend. I can tell when someone likes me in a romantic sense. This guy likes me as a friend.
Yeah. He
sees me as a sister. Like, we saw each other at the worst points of our lives because we were both going through puberty. We grew up together.
Yeah.
This guy sees me as a sister, not as a romantic partner.
Yeah, I had a similar experience, although one of my guy friends I did actually like. And the funny thing is he knew. I told him, and our relationship did not change at all.
And that's a great thing, where like relationships don't change.
Yeah, he later moved away like 2 years later, and I have not seen him for like 5 years. But like at the time I told him, like, hey, I like you in this way. And he's like, oh, okay. And then nothing happened. We remained friends. Nothing changed.
Yeah, and then the last point here is political viewpoints. So anything that pushes the status quo.
Pushes the narrative that other political viewpoints don't want to see.
Yeah.
It's like a constant battle. It's like Democrats don't want to see something. Or I say Democrats as if we have that. We're liberals.
If we have that. Here in Canada, we do not have
Our
Democrats. We have the liberals.
But going on that, it's like they don't want to see that. The other side doesn't want to see their side. So it's like, why don't we just ban everything together?
Yeah, just ban it all.
Nobody can see it.
No more books.
Therefore,
no more movies. No more TV shows. No more news sites. Nothing. No TikTok. No Instagram. No social media. No phones. We're going back to pen and paper. We're sending
a pigeon, an owl to go send your message.
Bird carriers for...
Don't shoot the bird. Do not kill the messenger.
Don't shoot the messenger. Don't do that. Okay. And so the reason why lamb to the slaughter...
Or we can theorize, because it's not really explicitly stated.
It's not explicitly stated. But the reason why we believe it's been challenged, because it's not been directly banned by anyone, it's controversial in its own ways.
Mm-hmm. And, like, it was eventually published.
It was held back.
It was rejected various times.
Because of the subject matter of the violence. A woman taking control of the situation, even though it's obviously not a great taking of control.
And the fact that she got away with it.
And yeah,
in this version, she got away with it.
Yeah, the idea that she got away with this. But also at that time, it was obviously a taboo subject for a woman to be a murderer. Even though, guys, pick up a history book. Look at female murderers in history.
I support women's wrongs.
I support women's rights. Most importantly, I also support women's wrongs. That's my motto. There is also that insinuation of infidelity, so that idea of an anti-family content along with the divorce. Like, this guy, he doesn't want to, like, be married to his wife. Yeah. He wants a divorce. He's most likely with someone else. Well, not most likely. We can infer he's with someone else.
Yeah, we can kind of take the context clues.
Based off of what we read and our opinions on this, keep in mind these are our opinions. Everyone who reads this is going to see it differently. Mm-hmm. And so he doesn't want to have this child that his wife, Mary, is actively carrying. Because she does talk about being pregnant and what happens to children of murderers, or like the unborn child of a female murderer. And then that last point, that it's not meant for children to read. That's the point. This was aimed at adults.
Yeah, it's like if I was like a kid and I saw this, I probably wouldn't be too affected, but like the general kid probably would have.
The general kid would be affected by it. They would have, especially if they're reading this when they're like 8. Yeah. Which is a typical age most people read
in this Roald Dahl. Because people era in this time are like, they're growing up with technology.
Oh yeah, so they're subject to stuff.
It's a whole other ballpark.
That's a whole other
the reason why I want to become a teacher.
But yeah, so like this, if I picked it up, I would not be affected based off of the fact that I've been watching horror movies and reading true crime and all that kind of stuff since I was like 5. Blame my parents.
I admittedly fall asleep to true crime, so I also would not be affected. I can sleep to hearing about gruesome stories.
Yeah. But so like, yeah, this is obviously not meant for children. This was one of his works that was originally published into a newspaper. Mm-hmm. Kids don't typically read newspapers, first of all. Yeah. Newspapers nowadays are almost obsolete with the fact that no one's really looking at the news.
And if they look at the news...
And if you look at the news, you only see bad things nowadays. But, like, this was published to a newspaper. It was first rejected from New York Times, I believe, correct?
Yeah, New York Times.
And then picked up by another newspaper, along with... 3-4 other short stories by Roald Dahl?
Yeah, he had rejected? I think he had like other short stories in this collection that were also rejected. Yeah. That he like I guess put together and then.
And so, but the thing is, this stuff was meant for the adult reader. This was not aimed towards kids. This was meant to show the fact that yes, this can happen. Yes, women can possibly be murderers. Women are subject to this pendulum of emotion here, where they get so caught up in the feelings of, obviously this is like shock and this is anger and possibly some sort of anxiety and fear of things that are going to happen in her future, that she does go and murder someone. But it's also a testament to reality at the time, where she wasn't, like, she's a woman, she's pregnant, she's going to soon be an unmarried woman.
Yeah.
She can't own a home.
And like,
she doesn't have that money.
Emphasis on the unmarried woman. It's different if you become a widow.
Yeah.
You're treated so much differently if you're a widow.
If you're a widow, you get support at this time. If you're an unmarried woman that's pregnant, even if everyone knew
you must have done something
were
wrong.
Once married you did something wrong, or people are going to see that you're pregnant or have a child, and they're like, without a husband, without a ring on her finger, and they're like, oh my gosh, she's like
before wed,
she's not wed, and like she's not married, she's had sex before marriage, she's possibly a prostitute, anything like that.
Yeah,
that's that idea.
And like, it's systemic, because some of this, although times have changed, it's still pretty relevant today.
Oh yeah,
there's like definitely a stigma towards divorced people, or getting a divorce.
It's such an insane idea that people have still in nowadays, where divorce is a foreign subject. You can't talk about it, can't like write on it still,
like especially in certain cultures, because I know it's like not as stigmatized in like, you know, for us Canada and like the States,
in the Western hemisphere,
but there's other places where like you can get killed for wanting a divorce.
Yeah,
so it's like, that's nuts.
But like, it is really just a testament to how much times haven't really changed, even though this was written.
That is whack. That's weird.
Maybe. My math could be wrong on this.
I'm also bad at math. It's okay.
I am not a math major. But like this, it just shows that like times have not changed that much. So there's still the idea that divorce is foreign and unwelcome. And tons of cultures and religions, even found in the West with like North America. There are tons of people who think and don't believe in divorce, even though there are tons of people who should get divorced.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And also that idea, which is becoming even more rampant nowadays, especially with the entire trad wife stuff going on TikTok still, where the woman has to be taken care of by the man who is the breadwinner.
Yeah, it's like the mentality, it doesn't suit me, but like, if you want to live that lifestyle,
if you want to live like that, to each their own.
But don't try to enforce it. Like, it's not everyone's going to agree with it, and like, these people have to understand it. They don't, but they have to.
Yeah, we live in a patriarchal society. It is so insane. I don't like it.
And it's like, for me, I grew up very much not with those expectations. Like, I was not expected to, you know, get married and have kids. My dad wanted me to pursue an education. He wanted me to, you know, get a job to succeed in life. So like, it's interesting for me to see these perspectives of people who like grew up in like families where like their brothers were treated better than they were as a woman. And we talked about this in my women and gender studies class last semester, where a lot of people grew up in a patriarchal household, and like, that's interesting for me, because to be fair, I don't have any brothers. I have an older sister, and that's it.
Yeah.
But like, my dad, like, my parents were very supportive in what I wanted to do. I grew up very open-minded, so it's like, especially coming from a small town, you'd think that the stereotype for a small town would be like, we're closed-minded, we don't accept this, we don't accept that. But yeah, that's not how I grew up, at least.
Whereas how I grew up with two brothers, and my sister and I were always we were all kind of expected to do chores, to keep the house tidy, to help cook if we wanted to or not. But also, it was more so pushed onto me and my sister than my brothers. And if something happened where, as my dad would say, my sister or I was acting out, with air quotes, that we would get a worse punishment. When it's not extremely terrible, he would just kind of yell at us, and I would go hide in my room for hours on end. Same as my sister. But my brothers, if they didn't want to do anything, they were okay with not doing it. It would just be pushed onto my sister or even my mom. Yeah. Like, my mom cooks every single meal in my house. She's a great cook. Love her cooking. Miss it. But she's cooked every meal in my house. My dad, he knows how to cook. He can cook for himself. He may not be a great cook, but he knows how to cook. He doesn't. And then he's like demanding, like, where's the food? It's 7:38.
Yeah.
I haven't eaten today. Where's my food? And it's like, yeah, I need a lunch for tomorrow. Telling it, like, my mom at, like, 11:30. So my mom has to go and make the lunch for my dad.
Yeah, she also has to, like, put aside what she was doing.
Getting ready for bed.
Yeah.
She's got to get up early to wake up all the kids.
Yeah. And then, like, there's me where later, after, you know, my sister, because my sister 8 years older than me, so, like, she's fully an adult. After she later moved out and, like, I got older and I could start fending for myself, my mom just started to be like, I'm not cooking. Especially because my dad would constantly, like, we would often go out for, like, coffee with his father, so, like, my grandpa, but, like, he was never home, so, like, my mom would cook dinner,
and then
thinking, like, while he was home, so, like, my dad would be home, but then he would leave, and so, like, my mom's like, I cooked dinner for, like, the both of us, because, like, assuming my sister wasn't home or she was at work, so she's like, I've cooked this food for you, but then you leave, so then there's, like, so she's like, I'm just gonna not cook for you anymore, and she's stuck by that. She only really cooks for herself, or if I'm home for, like, holidays or whatever, and I ask her to make something, she'll make it for me.
Yeah.
But, like, other than that, she stopped cooking. Just like,
and now I have hopefully, if I actually go through with it, my plan is to help my mom out with cooking, so it's not just her. I'm gonna get so pissed off if my dad's like, so where's the fucking food? Yeah, also, the thing is, every time I go home, he's always like, make me mac and cheese, make me this, make me this. And I'm like, you can cook for yourself.
That is, like, if you want me to, at least say please.
At least say please.
Like, have manners about it. Don't say it as if it's an expectation that I'm going to say yes.
For my family, it's the expectation that I make them cookies every time I go home, and I make whoever's home food. And it's like, no.
Okay, baking is where I cross the line. I'm not baking for you every single time I come home.
No, because the thing is,
I can, like, cook for you the odd time, but I'm not baking.
When we were younger, when we'd have days off school, or we were just home for a weekend or something like that, my mom obviously did not want to cook, get a bit of a respite. We would go and either one person would cook for the four of us all together, leaving my parents out of it because they probably went out for dinner. So there would be the four of us, one person would cook, and then another time someone else would cook, and then it would just be kind of like an alternation between the four of us. Or there'd be times where, like, I would cook for, like, say my older brother, and then another time he'd cook for me, and it's like we're just giving back that same kind of help or whatever we gave to the other person. But that doesn't happen whenever I'm home now, because my younger brother, sadly, does not really know how to cook. Like, he's taking a cooking class, so he's getting better at it.
Yeah, so he's learning.
He's learning. But the thing is, for the most part, he only knew how to use, like, a convection oven. So throwing taquitos or mozzarella sticks or any, like, chimichangas, that kind of stuff, into, like, a microwave or a convection oven. Something that he didn't actually have to cook. And then I'd be like, can you make me something? Because either, like, I'm working or I'm working on homework or something like that. And he's like, no, I don't know how to. I'm like, buddy.
See, that just feeds into the expectation that, like, women have to do all the work.
Yeah.
Men aren't expected to do anything except for, like, extensive labor and, like, stuff like family support, stuff like that. So it's like,
it's an insane thing, especially carrying into what we thought was a change in times with all of this stuff being in the past. But reality is that this stuff is not in the past.
No, most
and
definitely.
Like, Lamb to the Slaughter, you can erase that idea of it being written in 1953 and put it into 2025, and it's like, this is still relevant to this day. This idea that, like, she had to be taken care of after the divorce.
Like, we can connect with it more because we're also both women. So,
women. And we have not murdered anyone. We'll put that out there.
Allegedly, I have thought about it.
Allegedly. But yeah, it's still, like, relevant to this very day. And banning books in of itself, the censorship of the media this has always been around.
Yeah.
Especially
and it can be for good reasons. It can be
for good reasons. There are some books that definitely should be banned, but then there are others that obviously shouldn't.
Like books like memoirs of, like say
memoirs. Like, but also the thing is that book is also technically a memoir.
Yes. But I mean, I was gonna try to say, like, memoirs of, like, say, like, a marginalized group or, like, a person from a marginalized group and how they grew up, what they faced.
An autobiography of someone who hasn't massacred a group of people
Yeah.
should not be reading that kind of stuff.
Like, no, like there's books that are banned for, like, for me.
For fantasy.
Yep.
For, as they call it, witchcraft. Percy Jackson, a children's, like, novel series.
Based on, like, Greek mythology.
Based off of a mythology. Is banned, well, being challenged by Project 2025. And if that goes through, it's gone. And if you didn't know that, now you know.
See, I never read Percy Jackson.
Oh, man.
I've wanted to, but then I was into other books at the time, like other series, so I never got into it.
I love Percy Jackson. Not like that series is amazing.
Yeah, like there's books like that where, like, for reasons should not be banned, but is on the list to get banned, or like they're thinking of doing it. It's like why?
Yeah. Or that entire series by that turf in the in UK.
Ah, yes.
Who you all should know by just saying that. Harry Potter, written by, not her. Like, that's obviously being, like...
And technically, if you think about it, that book has racism. Within its lore. Because you have, like...
entire book, like, series.
You have the Muggles, and then you
get
have
the purebloods who are over there being like mud, like,
and you have mixed, and then you have Muggles.
like,
so like there's reasons like that where like there's real life issues tied into like the world building of the book, and because of that it gets challenged.
Yeah,
it's like this is literally take out the magic, and this is what happens in real life.
You can do that with pretty much any kind of book.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like, especially the dystopian genre in of itself is literally a not so distant idea of a world that has been shifted to the left. Our world shifted to the left.
I feel
with
like
the wrong timeline.
I feel
like we're actively
in a couple of years, The Giver might turn out to be a reality. I would not want that. I love The Giver. Don't get me wrong. I love that book series.
Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood.
Yeah, that is
based off
so far like the most like
that was based off of a reality, I think, during the Afghanistan war. I have
not read it, so I would not.
I've read a tiny bit. I'm not a master in knowing this book, but I'm pretty sure it was based off of the Afghanistan war with the control of women's bodies, which is still prevalent today. That book, I think, is becoming more and more relevant as each day passes, especially in the States.
It's like on the nose at this point.
Yeah.
I think to end it, it's just this short story is very much, you could take away the fact that it was written and published in 1953, place it into 2025, and it's
still relevant.
Maybe
and the ideas that this is being obviously challenged and is considered controversial for that idea that it provokes an anti-family content, or that it's including violence. Times have changed, but not that much.
Yeah, so as we mentioned earlier, like way earlier in the episode, this is for a university project, so this may or may not be the only episode that we do.
We'll see.
We have a plan to eventually move on to reading a novella, which is slightly longer than a short story, but not as long as a novel. Yeah. And then moving on to a novel. But we have not gotten there yet.
That's if we decide that we have the
time and the energy to want to do this.
We are university students. Our workload is that of a university student.
We are first years, so we have to manage our time wisely.
Yeah, but the nice thing is that like we have time as well. If we decided that we wanted to go in and do this for another one. And also, whoever's listening to this, if they decided that this is interesting enough.
If this is the shit, then yeah.
If this is good, like you like our banter and our off-topicness, then yeah.
Before we end it, I will say we've probably talked for at least an hour. A lot of it might not be pertaining to this episode.
We have talked for over an hour and 15 minutes. A large majority of it's going to actually be pertaining to our ideas.
Because like this was a very political thing, so like a lot of it is like our personal experiences growing up with these ideas.
Yeah.
That pertain to the story, so like it's relevant.
And the thing is, we both grew up in drastically different situations.
Yep.
And so we can each take our own unique perspective on this and put it into this narrative.
Because, like, we might share...
And we can talk about it.
We might share similar ideas now and, like, ideologies, but, like...
But we still grew up differently.
Small town girl, city, Christian, fully open mind public, not religious whatsoever.
I knew religion because I had to study it for 13 years.
Yep.
Not religious anymore. I could say that. But yeah, that is the first official episode of Bookmarked.
Whack.
That's insane. Yeah, that's the first official one. We've been talking about this for a few months now, so it's weird that it's actually done.
Yeah.
But yeah, just let us know if you guys want to have more episodes as a possibility, and if so,
I like talking, so this is perfect for me.
I like talking about controversial subjects, and that's books here.
I just like talking.
I'm not the biggest
I might be wrong, but I like talking.
I will stick to my opinion, and if I'm totally wrong on any of these ideas, and you guys have something to say about it,
we listen, we don't judge.
We listen, we don't judge, and we learn.
Yeah. Anyway, that's our first episode.
Anyways, yeah, that's it. That's Bookmarked. Yeah.
Whack.
We are your hosts. This has been Bookmarked. We are your hosts, Ash and Rune. And so, yeah, we'll possibly see you next time. Bye.